This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. Fired FBI Director James Comey says President Trump is morally unfit to be president. He made that announcement in an interview with ABC News Sunday evening to promote his new book. It's also his first interview since he was fired by President Trump almost a year ago. Our Caitlin Burke has the story.
James Comey has broken his silence, and he's not sugarcoating his thoughts about the man who fired him.
President must embody respect and adhere to the values that are at the core of this country, the most important being truth. This president is not able to do that. He is morally unfit to be president.
In an exclusive interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, Comey detailed what he considered some of the most controversial moments of his career. Among them, reopening the Hillary Clinton email investigation just ahead of the 2016 presidential election. Comey said he had no choice because that's where the investigation led him.
Norm is, if you can avoid it, you take no action that might have an impact on an election. And I can't see a door that's labeled no action here.
Still, he expressed disgust that invesigation could have influenced the election, which Trump won, in an upset that stunned Washington.
A whole lot of me was thinking, oh my God, did we have some role in this?
But he says if he were given the chance to do it over, he would, because he says he wouldn't want to be influenced by politics.
If I ever start considering whose political fortunes will be affected by a decision, we're done. We're just another player in the tribal battle.
Comey compared Trump to a mob boss.
Not trying to, by the way, suggest that President Trump is out breaking legs and shaking down shopkeepers. But instead what I'm talking about is that leadership culture.
Ahead of the interview Sunday night, President Trump lashed out on Twitter, calling Comey the worst FBI director in history and saying it was his great honor to fire him. Comey says the American public needs to vote Trump out of office in 2020, saying it's a duty that they're bound to do directly, rather than be let off the hook by impeachment. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Tensions continue to mount following the U.S.-led strike on Syria. This morning, international chemical weapons inspectors are on the ground getting to work. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is set to announce another round of sanctions against Russia. CBN's national security correspondent Eric Rosales brings us the story now from Washington.
The ruins of Syria's chemical weapons facilities. A scientific research center north of Damascus used for development, production, and testing of chemical weapons, along with 2 other facilities, were destroyed. The Pentagon says the strike set the Syrian chemical weapons program back years. It was a precision strike, more than 100 missiles fired in a one-time shot, more than double the firepower than last year's strike on a Syrian base.
I think the words cripple and degrade are good, accurate words.
Before and after satellite images show the targeted buildings wiped away, bird marks still visible.
We are confident that we've significantly degraded his ability to ever use chemical weapons again.
Over the weekend, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley had a strong message for Syria's President Bashar al-Assad.
If the Syrian regime uses this poisonous gas again, the United States is locked and loaded.
Analysts say Russia has propped up the Syrian president, and later today, the Trump administration is expected to unleash another blow, this time targeting Russia. The Kremlin will face its 3rd round of new sanctions in the past 4 weeks, punishing it for enabling the Syrian government's use of chemical weapons in its civil war.
Russian sanctions will be coming down, and they will go directly to any sort of companies that were dealing with equipment related to Assad and chemical weapons use.
Russian President Vladimir Putin warned on Sunday that further Western attacks on Syria would bring chaos to world affairs. Pentagon officials tell CBN News further U.S. airstrikes are a possibility. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
Here's a look at some of the other big headlines we're following for you right now inside the CBN newsroom. A deadly storm is moving east after dumping 2 feet of snow in parts of the Midwest. The storm has coated Michigan roads with ice and knocked out power lines. More than 230 flights have been canceled in Minneapolis. It is now expected to move farther south with powerful winds and even possible tornadoes. A major development in the health of former First Lady Barbara Bush. The 92-year-old has decided not to seek additional medical treatment for her failing health. A family spokesperson says she will instead focus on comfort care. They did not elaborate on her condition. First Lady Bush has been treated for a thyroid condition, though, for decades. The CEO of Starbucks is apologizing after two African-American men were arrested at a Philadelphia coffee shop. The entire incident caught on video. The two men were sitting at the shop when an employee called the police. CEO Kevin Johnson issued a statement calling the arrest a reprehensible outcome. The incident has sparked national outrage. And you can find more on these stories throughout the day at cbnnews.com. Pastor Robert Morris, founder of Gateway Church in Texas, is home after a harrowing near-death experience in the hospital last week. His wife, Debbie, celebrated his homecoming on Instagram, posting a photo of him leaving the hospital and watching Gateway Church services on a tablet over the weekend. His ordeal started with a surgery to repair a hernia. While recovering, he suffered a near-fatal abdominal bleeding, which required additional surgery. In all, he endured 4 surgeries in 7 days. His wife, Debbie, posted her gratitude on Instagram, writing, "We have felt so loved. Your prayers have been so important. They mattered." She says her husband still has a long road to recovery. Coming up, Israel turned 70. We're going to explore how its existence is a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. The trial of a North Carolina pastor imprisoned in Turkey begins today. Pastor Andrew Brunson faces 35 years in prison. The 50-year-old evangelical preacher has lived in Turkey with his family for 23 years, where he leads a church. He was detained 18 months ago on immigration violations, but has since been charged with revealing state secrets. Some 50,000 others were arrested around the same time as Turkey's president cracked down after a coup attempt to overthrow his government. Many experts say Brunson is being used as a political pawn between Turkey and the U.S. His attorney says recent cases indicate Turkish courts often convict people without sufficient evidence. Israel celebrates its 70th anniversary this week. Chris Mitchell now has a look at where the infant state was in 1948, where it is today, and how it's fulfilling ancient biblical prophecies.
In the spring of 1948, Israel took its place among the nations when David Ben-Gurion announced the establishment of the Jewish state.
What was the situation in May 1948 when we were 600,000 people here, about half the size of a mid-sized American city, with basically handguns fighting 6 Arab armies that came within 25 miles of Tel Aviv, by the way. It's hard to imagine today. That surrounded Jerusalem, not far from where we're sitting. No economy, no allies. A population that was still languishing in displaced person camp in Europe after the Holocaust. I mean, think about that.
70 years later, Israel not only survived, but thrived.
Our economy has one of the highest growth rates in the world. We have one of the most powerful armies in the world leader in technology. Israel is regularly listed one of the 7th or 8th most powerful countries in the world. In a historical perspective, I think that Israel's situation is nothing less short of miraculous.
Israel's continuing miracle is not only that it's thrived, but now helps nations in need.
Because we're a light unto the nations. That's the great fulfillment of that great prophecy. And in fact, that's what Israel is doing. It's doing it in places like Haiti or in the Philippines or in Mexico.
When Israel sent aid to Mexico after their recent devastating earthquake, Mexicans applauded them on the streets.
They just love Israel. And you see that elsewhere, in many places around the world. And people say, well, what do you do? I mean, what is it that you get out of it? And the answer is, we're not getting out of it anything. We're fulfilling our deepest values. Israel is a light unto the nations.
Israel is not just going to the nations, but now the nations are coming to Israel. The company is called Our Crowd. That's brought 10,000 people from 90 countries around the world here to Jerusalem for a high-tech summit, bringing together innovation and investment.
Turns out that Israel is really the second most important source of innovation and innovative companies in the world outside of the United States and Silicon Valley. We're called the startup nation. We're looking here across the walls to Jerusalem in our ancient history. We've always been dreamers here in Israel, whether it's back in the time of Abraham or the prophets. There's always been incredible good news to come from this country. And today the good news is about innovation and technology.
And 70 years on, Israel is protecting the birthplace of the good news and more.
What is today the entrance of the old city? But that's actually King Herod's palace. We believe very much that this was the place of the trial of Jesus, according to what we learn from the New Testament.
Shahar Shiloh serves as a consultant for the Tower of David Museum in Jerusalem. He says Israel, since its founding, has preserved the historical and biblical sites, dug into its ancient past, and opened its door to people of all faiths. He says it's a mission.
Tourism is much more than just making money. Tourism is making friends. Tourism is making advocacy. Tourism is making your partnership around the world a lot safer. Our, mutual basis grows stronger with every tourist being in Israel, living back home, and talking about Israel wherever he lives. This is something that we cannot achieve without tourism.
Shiloh says a visit to Israel for Christians should be a personal mission.
We're always saying, before coming to Israel, you read the Bible, you see it in black and white. Once visited Israel, in every chapter, every story, every time you read about Paul, Peter, or Jesus, or St. Mary, it's all vivid and vibe. And everything becomes in full color, full HD, 4K. Something happens in your soul, and you're never, we say you'll never be the same again. This is my message to our brothers and sisters from the Christian world. Visiting Israel is a part of your soul and your heritage, not mine only, yours as well. And if you wish to understand yourself better and the Bible better, and your friends, and the next time you go to church, you need to be here. It's a mission for life.
Whether helping the world through humanitarian outreach, bringing innovation to global investors, or being the responsible stewards of history, these are simply a fulfillment of Israel's mission to the world. Tikkun Olam, the Jewish principle of repairing the world. And as the Hebrew prophet Isaiah wrote nearly 2,700 years ago, to be a light to the nations. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, they're opening their doors to people who often are forgotten by the church. We're going to show you how congregations are welcoming those with disabilities. One in 5 Americans are living with some form of disability. So what does that mean when it comes to them attending church? Our Charlene Aaron introduces us to a woman who's changing how churches include people with special needs, and she's inspired by her own daughter.
17-year-old Samantha Jackson sits alone in her living room, making sounds only she understands. Shh. Samantha has severe autism, a developmental disorder that manifests in many ways, including the inability to develop language.
Because she can't communicate well, she gets very, very frustrated. As you can imagine, that was even worse when she was younger.
Have you had any negative experiences with her in public? And you laugh when we ask you.
Karen may laugh now, but dealing with this behavior is no joke. 7-year-old Ty Jessup also has autism. His parents share their experiences on a video blog like this, when Ty had a meltdown in the middle of an IKEA store.
You need to get in the shop. Oh my gosh, you guys. I just had like the worst experience in IKEA. I know it won't be his last meltdown, and I know that it's normal, but it's just
Now imagine a meltdown like that happening at church. For the Jackson family, it became a reality when 4-year-old Samantha turned extremely disruptive during a quiet service.
She's basically kicking and screaming as I drag her out. That was pretty tough. I just stopped taking her, and my husband and I took turns going to Mass.
But Karen believes Samantha belongs in church.
I think she's a person of immense faith. She doesn't show it the way you and I might show it, but she shows it with her actions very clearly.
The first time Karen caught a glimpse of this was when Samantha was 10 years old at this McDonald's restaurant. On the way in, she encountered a homeless man, someone most people would avoid.
But Samantha stopped dead in front of him, and she looked at him, and she reached out to him. And I was so moved by that. because, here I was trying to shuffle her by, not even acknowledging him. And there she was acknowledging this other person in such a beautiful way. That was sort of when I think for me, I started thinking about her impact on other people and her spiritual life.
What is your philosophy when it comes to members of your congregation who have special needs?
All are welcome.
Thanks to that spirit, the Jackson family began attending Blessed Sacrament Catholic Church. Father Joe, however, wasn't quite prepared for someone like Samantha.
No idea about autism. I couldn't even spell the word. And then Karen said, how about if I speak to the parish at all the masses? I thought, there's no way I'm going to block the role of the Holy Spirit. My gosh.
Samantha is now fully a part of this congregation. Karen started a support group for other families who had children with disabilities, but she soon realized the problem was bigger than she thought. According to one study, although over 80% of adults with disabilities say faith is important in their life, less than half are involved in church, and 1 out of 3 families has left their congregation because their child hasn't been welcomed or included.
So, my prayer was to God, what more can I do? And that is a pretty, dangerous prayer.
Indeed.
Indeed. And so Faith Inclusion Network sort of developed out of that.
In 2008, Karen started the Faith Inclusion Network, or FIN. It helps churches learn to become more inclusive and families to find a welcome place to worship.
Disability itself is simply a more noticeable form of the brokenness and difficulty that's common to the human experience.
FIN is also branching out to bring together leaders of the faith and disability community to network, educate, and inspire.
For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. There's no asterisk on that verse that sends you to the bottom of the page where it says, except for people with disabilities.
Susie Stefanowicz has seen how God prepared some of these people for his work. She and her husband began the Chosen Ministry to help people with disabilities worship together.
They have the pure God's love, I think, that with no inhibitions at all. And you come here and you just feel totally loved.
Everybody will tell us what a great job we're doing. And we actually get much more out of the work that we do than what we put into it.
Samantha Jackson spends less time alone now. Here, she is free to be herself and dance. Charlene Aaron, CBN News, Virginia Beach.
That woman prayed a prayer. I hope you will pray as well. Father, let me be the answer to someone else's prayer. Stay with us. We'll be right back. It's time now for your Monday Motivation, and I pray that this message will inspire you and help you to jumpstart your week. Consider this: worship is love expressed. Let your life be sincere worship to an Almighty Father who loves you more than anyone. After all, God is love. With that word, be sure to make this a marvelous Monday and a wonderful rest of the week. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about always at cbnnews.com. And we would love to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can reach us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make this a marvelous Monday. We'll see you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody, and God bless.